is that?
Are we watching the world shift in ways that demand attention before time runs out? Across continents, the sky turns blood red, fireballs streak through the night, and silent lights glide overhead before vanishing. Lightning strikes the same towering structure again and again. Flames rise from the ocean, water flows across desert sand, the ground erupts, and swarms of locusts darken farmland like living clouds. These moments were filmed by ordinary people, yet together they feel connected. Events appear closer, stronger, and harder to dismiss. Have you noticed how often scenes like this appear lately, forming a pattern that is difficult to ignore? The question is no longer whether something is happening, but what these signs might be pointing toward. The first sign begins when the sky itself changes. 1. Blood-red sky covered the land. Residents looked upward and felt unease rise immediately as the sky shifted into a deep red haze. Sunlight faded within minutes, replaced by an unnatural glow that covered towns in crimson and orange. Streets grew quiet, visibility dropped, and the air felt unusually heavy. Cars slowed, people paused mid-conversation, and cameras lifted toward a horizon that no longer looked familiar. The calm blue sky had transformed into something ominous, almost like a warning written across the heavens. The silence that followed seemed heavier than the color itself, pressing on those who stood watching. The red haze spread across wide areas, swallowing daylight and reshaping the landscape. Buildings appeared muted, roads faded into shadow, and the sun struggled to pierce the thick atmosphere. People stepped outside, trying to understand what they were witnessing, some shielding their faces, others staring upward in disbelief. Videos from different locations showed the same crimson glow, reinforcing the sense that this was not isolated. Entire towns appeared submerged in red light, and the sudden transformation created a shared feeling of urgency. The sky no longer felt passive. It felt active, drawing attention upward and holding it there. Joel chapter 2 verse 31 states, "The sun shall be turned into darkness, and the moon into blood, before the great and the terrible day of the Lord come." The darkened daylight and red sky echo this prophetic imagery. For many, such scenes feel less like coincidence and more like reminders that creation itself can speak. Routine stops, attention lifts, and hearts reflect. Eventually, the crimson haze lifted and daylight returned, yet the impression remained. Conversations continued, but many carried the memory with them. The heavens had spoken in color and silence, leaving questions that lingered long after the sky cleared. Eyes that had turned upward once now searched again, wondering what might follow. Another sign was already unfolding, and this time the night sky would ignite with streaks of fire. 2. Multiple fireballs moved across the night. 2 blazing lights suddenly cut across the night sky, stopping conversations and freezing movement below. Drivers in Irving, Texas, looked up as the first bright object glowed above the horizon, moving steadily through the darkness. Before anyone could process it, a second fireball appeared, crossing horizontally and then rising upward at a sharp angle that felt unnatural. Phones lifted instantly, voices filled with surprise, and the quiet night turned tense. The lights did not drift or flicker like distant stars. They moved with clarity and purpose, leaving observers with the unsettling feeling that the sky itself had become active. The first object continued along its path, steady and deliberate, while the second shifted direction in a sudden upward climb. The contrast between the two movements intensified curiosity. 2 lights, 2 paths, and a precise change in direction created a moment that felt intentional rather than random. The scene lasted only seconds, yet the impact lingered. Viewers shared recordings, and similar sightings began appearing from other locations. The sky, that had already shown unusual signs, now displayed moving fire. The sequence felt like signals, appearing one after another, drawing attention upward and deepening the sense that something meaningful was unfolding. Luke chapter 21, verse 11 declares, "And great earthquakes shall be in diverse places, and famines, and pestilences, and fearful sights and great signs shall there be from heaven." The phrase, "fearful sights from heaven," echoes strongly in moments like this. Bright fire moving across the night carries symbolic weight. Believers often recall that God has used the heavens to capture attention and deliver warnings. The sudden appearance of these lights stirred reflection, turning a quiet evening into a moment of awareness. The sky did not simply glow, it seemed to communicate urgency. The controlled motion left witnesses unsettled. The lights did not fall randomly, nor did they fade slowly. They traveled with direction, leaving questions behind. Repeated unusual sky events within a short span intensified concern. People began to wonder whether the heavens were sending signals that humanity had overlooked. The stillness of the night magnified the experience. Darkness surrounded the scene, yet the moving fire drew every eye upward, holding attention until it vanished. Revelation chapter 8 verse 10 states, "And the third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as if it were a lamp, and it fell upon the third part of the rivers, and upon the fountains of waters." The imagery of a burning object descending from heaven mirrors the fiery motion seen above Texas. Scripture often connects blazing lights with moments of warning and reflection. When the lights faded, the sky returned to silence, yet the sense of urgency remained. Another sign was already approaching, and this time the night would hold a single silent glow drifting across the darkness. 3. A silent light crossed the night. A single light appeared above the city, and the calm night suddenly felt watched. Late in Vancouver, a man raised his camera and captured a glowing object drifting slowly overhead. It moved smoothly, without flickering, gliding with precise control through the darkness. No sound followed, no trail remained, and no other lights surrounded it. Then the glow vanished instantly, like a lamp turned off by an unseen hand. The empty sky seemed to hold a question. What could move so calmly, then disappear without a trace? The light did not blink like an aircraft, and it did not streak like a meteor. It traveled steadily, then vanished in a single moment. One glow, one path, and a sudden absence created tension. Observers described the scene as quiet yet unsettling, as if the motion carried intention. The stillness did not ease concern. Instead, it drew attention upward even after the light disappeared. Psalm chapter 19 verse 1 states, "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament sheweth his handiwork." A solitary light crossing the darkness often reminds believers that the heavens reflect the Creator's presence. The gentle motion, the silence, and the sudden disappearance resemble a subtle message rather than a loud warning. God's signs are not always thunder and fire. Sometimes they arrive quietly, inviting reflection. The silent glow above Vancouver felt like a whisper in the night, guiding thoughts toward reverence and awareness. The sky seemed calm, yet the stillness carried meaning. Some viewers proposed distant technology, yet others felt that no ordinary explanation captured the authority of the motion. The light did not rush or falter. It moved with calm certainty, then vanished completely. That calmness created unease. A silent glow, traveling alone, can symbolize observation and purpose. The heavens appeared gentle, yet watchful. The moment lingered, encouraging prayer and humility. The darkness returned, though the memory of that quiet passage remained. Matthew chapter 2 verse 9 records, "When they had heard the king, they departed, and lo, the star, which they saw in the east, went before them, till it came and stood over where the young child was. That guiding star moved with direction and meaning. The silent light over Vancouver echoes that imagery. A single glow crossing the sky can draw attention to divine guidance. The night grew still again after it vanished, yet the sense of expectation increased. Another sign was already approaching, one that would break the silence with sudden force. 4. Lightning struck the same point repeatedly. Lightning slammed into the same point again and again, turning a passing storm into something far more unsettling. During an early morning over New York City, thunder rolled and dark clouds covered the skyline. A sudden flash struck the top of One World Trade Center, lighting the tower against the gray sky. The brightness faded. Then another bolt followed, hitting the exact same place. Witnesses kept their cameras steady as lightning returned repeatedly with striking precision. Each impact illuminated the structure, then darkness closed in before the next flash arrived. The repetition drew attention upward, creating the sense that the storm was focusing on a single point. Exodus chapter 19 verse 16 states, "And it came to pass on the third day in the morning, that there was thunder and lightning, and a thick cloud upon the mount, and the voice of the trumpet exceeding loud, so that all the people that were in the camp trembled." Thunder and lightning in Scripture often accompany moments of divine presence and warning. The repeated strikes over the tower felt more than dramatic weather. Phrase. Concentrated flashes landing on one location created emphasis. The sky seemed to repeat its message, urging observers to notice. The storm no longer appeared ordinary. It felt purposeful, commanding attention through light and sound. Footage shows multiple bolts connecting with the same target within seconds. The storm shifted across the area, yet the lightning continued returning. One structure, one focal point, and repeated flashes intensified tension. Each strike brightened the tower, then thunder rolled before the next burst of light. The pattern held attention, turning ordinary weather into something difficult to ignore. Why would lightning choose the same point again and again? Luke chapter 17 verse 24 declares, "For as the lightning that lighteneth out of the one part under heaven shineth unto the other part under heaven, so shall also the Son of Man be in his day." Lightning in this passage represents sudden revelation and unmistakable clarity. The repeated flashes over the tower echoed that imagery. Brightness broke through darkness again and again, impossible to ignore. The storm eventually moved away, yet the memory remained vivid. The heavens had spoken through thunder and light, and the quiet that followed felt heavier. Beyond that fading storm, another sign was already forming, one that would rise not in flashes, but in flames. 5. A ring of fire burned on the water. Fire erupted from the surface of the ocean, forming a blazing circle that looked like a burning eye staring into the sky. Calm water suddenly ignited, and flames spun in a near-perfect ring. Dark waves reflected the intense orange glow, making the sea appear alive with fire. Boats slowed and kept their distance as smoke rose upward. The circular blaze pulsed and shifted, expanding and folding inward. Witnesses described a mixture of awe and fear as the ocean transformed into something unfamiliar. The shape alone unsettled viewers, and the longer it burned, the more it felt like a warning emerging from the deep. Revelation chapter 9 verse 2 states, "And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit." The imagery of smoke and fire rising from hidden depths resonates strongly with the burning circle on the water. Flames appeared where calm waves should have been. The sea, often associated with peace, suddenly resembled a furnace. End quote. For believers, such scenes evoke reflection about forces beneath the surface. The fire did not simply burn, it seemed to emerge from unseen places, drawing attention to the depths. Reports mentioned gas escaping from below the ocean floor, yet the explanation did little to reduce tension. The surface continued to glow, and the ring remained clear against the dark water. One circle, surrounded by darkness, created a haunting image. The ocean, vast and silent, appeared to release something powerful enough to ignite the surface. Isaiah chapter 24, verses 19 to 20 declares, "The earth is utterly broken down. The earth is clean dissolved. The earth is moved exceedingly. The earth shall reel to and fro like a drunkard, and shall be removed like a cottage, and the transgression thereof shall be heavy upon it. And it shall fall, and not rise again." These words describe disturbance rising from within creation itself. The burning ring upon the sea reflected that sense of upheaval. Fire from hidden depths suggested instability below the surface. The flames eventually weakened, yet the image remained vivid. End quote. The sea returned to darkness, though the warning lingered. Beyond that quiet water, another sign was already forming high above, where the sky itself would begin to change shape. 6. Flames rose from the ocean's surface. The ocean had just shown a ring of fire, and now flames rose again, this time without shape or warning. A tourist filming the quiet coastline suddenly captured bright fire erupting directly from the water. The flames flickered above the waves, glowing against the dark surface. No explosion preceded the moment. No sound explained it. Fire simply appeared where the calm sea had been seconds earlier. The contrast shocked viewers. Water and flame stood together, defying expectation. The horizon remained peaceful, yet the burning surface created tension. The ocean, vast and silent, suddenly looked unstable. Revelation chapter 8, verse 8 states, "And the second angel sounded, and as it were a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea, and the third part of the sea became blood." The imagery of fire connected to the ocean resonates strongly with flames rising from the water. Scripture often portrays the sea as a place where dramatic change unfolds. When fire appears on the surface, believers see more than a rare occurrence. The burning water reflects ancient warnings. The calm sea transformed into a scene of heat and light, reminding viewers that even stable elements can shift suddenly. The footage spread quickly. The flame appeared large enough to be seen from a distance, standing above rippling waves. The water moved beneath it, yet the fire continued to burn steadily. One moment calm, the next moment flame. The sudden shift deepened unease. Observers questioned how the sea could ignite so abruptly. The dark surface reflected orange light, and the surrounding water shimmered. The image felt unnatural, holding attention longer than expected. 2 Peter chapter 3 verse 10 declares of God, "But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in the which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. The earth also, and the works that are therein shall be burned up." This passage speaks of transformation through intense heat. Flames rising from water echo that imagery. Fire touched the sea, then faded. Calm returned, yet the sense of warning remained. Beyond that quiet shoreline, another sign was already forming, this time high above, where the sky would shape itself into something that seemed to watch. 7. Water flowed across the dry desert. One of the driest landscapes on Earth suddenly began to change. Where cracked sand had stretched for miles, thin streams of water appeared and slowly traced new paths across the ground. The sun still burned overhead, yet the surface that once reflected only heat now shimmered with movement. Locals paused, uncertain whether what they were seeing was real. Cameras captured narrow channels weaving gently through barren terrain. There was no violent storm, no roaring flood, only steady water forming where none should exist. The quietness of the moment made it even more striking. After scenes of fire, lightning, and upheaval, the desert introduced something calm yet deeply meaningful. Isaiah chapter 43 verse 19 states, "Behold, I will do a new thing." Dose. "I will even make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert." The appearance of flowing water across dry land echoes this promise. For many believers, water in barren places symbolizes provision and renewal. The desert, long defined by absence, suddenly displayed motion and life. The streams moved slowly, but their presence carried weight. The land that once seemed silent now appeared to respond. The gentle flow drew attention not through force, but through quiet transformation. Rain rarely visits such regions, making the sight even more remarkable. The water spread gradually, soaking into sand and reshaping the surface. Small channels widened, and darker patches formed where moisture settled. Witnesses described a shift in emotion as they watched the change unfold. What had been empty now felt hopeful. The desert, often associated with endurance and dryness, appeared softened. The movement of water created a visual contrast that was simple yet powerful. Without noise or urgency, the scene held attention. The land seemed to breathe again, inviting reflection rather than alarm. Observers online noted how different this sign felt compared to earlier events. Fire had warned, lightning had startled, and the earth had shaken. Here, water is restored. The gentle currents did not rush, yet they reshaped perception. The desert's stillness remained, but it now carried life within it. The transformation unfolded slowly, reinforcing the sense that not all signs arrive with intensity. Some appear quietly, encouraging patience and trust. The calm flow suggested balance after tension, offering reassurance in place of fear. Psalm chapter 107, verse 35 declares, "He turneth the wilderness into standing water, and dry ground into water springs." These words mirror the streams crossing the desert sand. The appearance of water, where none was expected, strengthened faith for many observers. The moment felt like reassurance following a warning, a reminder that renewal can follow hardship. Eventually, the water slowed and the desert settled again, yet the impression remained. The land had shifted, if only briefly, and hope lingered in its wake. As the quiet scene faded, attention turned upward once more. Another sign was already forming, ready to draw eyes back to the sky. 8. The ground suddenly burst open. The earth shifted without warning, turning quiet land into a scene of urgency within seconds. On November 11, 2024, residents of San Jose de Mulatos in Colombia watched as a dormant mud volcano suddenly came to life. Thick columns of mud pushed upward, and the ground appeared to breathe with force. Calm surroundings disappeared instantly. Families gathered belongings, and neighbors called to one another as they moved toward safer ground. The land that had felt stable for years now seemed unpredictable. The eruption arrived abruptly, and the transformation created unease. Could the ground itself no longer be trusted? Numbers chapter 16, verses 31 to 33 states, "And it came to pass, as he had made an end of speaking all these words, that the ground clave asunder that was under them, and the earth opened her mouth and swallowed them up." This passage describes land opening with dramatic force. The eruption in Colombia echoed that imagery. The earth, often viewed as dependable, suddenly displayed instability. What had been solid became fluid. The moment reminded viewers that even the firmest ground can shift without notice. The sense of security tied to the land seemed to weaken as mud rose from below. The flow spread outward, covering fields and pathways that once connected homes and farms. Thick layers advanced steadily, reshaping familiar terrain. Residents living nearby evacuated toward a local school, watching as the landscape transformed before their eyes. The mud moved slowly but powerfully, erasing boundaries and softening everything in its path. One moment calm, the next moment disruption. The dormant site had remained silent for years, yet it awakened without hesitation. The ground appeared alive, releasing pressure from hidden depths. Witnesses described a mixture of fear and disbelief as the land shifted beneath them. Cameras captured the gradual expansion. The surface rippled, and new cracks formed along the edges. Trees leaned as the earth softened around their roots. The movement was not violent, yet its persistence created tension. The mud did not rush, but it did not stop. Stability vanished in minutes, replaced by uncertainty. Observers kept their distance, aware that the ground could continue to change. The quiet countryside had turned into a reminder of how quickly normal conditions can shift. The eruption forced attention downward, toward the very foundation people depend upon. Luke chapter 21 verse 25 declares, "And there shall be signs in the sun, and in the moon, and in the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations with perplexity." The phrase, "distress upon the earth," resonates with scenes like this. Confusion followed the burst of mud, and urgency replaced calm. The land eventually settled, though concern remained. The ground that had moved so suddenly now rested in silence, leaving behind reshaped terrain and lingering questions. The earth had spoken through motion. As the scene quieted, attention began to shift once more. Another sign was already forming, ready to draw eyes away from the ground and back toward what would appear next. 9. A smoking pit opened on earth. The ground collapsed without warning, leaving behind a massive smoking pit that looked like a wound in the earth. Residents watched as solid land suddenly gave way, revealing a deep crater where ground had stood moments earlier. Dust slid downward, and faint smoke rose from the darkness below. A nearby house stood close to the rim, silent and abandoned, intensifying the unease. The opening appeared vast, its depth hidden in shadow. The scene felt chilling. Could the earth itself be revealing something buried beneath the surface? Revelation chapter 9 verses 1 to 2 states, "And the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth. And to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace. And the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit." The imagery of a smoking pit rising from the earth mirrors the crater in Sheragoshan. Smoke drifting upward from a dark opening evokes warning. The land, once firm, now appeared hollow. The moment reminded observers that hidden depths can emerge suddenly. Authorities closed roads and halted transport to prevent danger. The area had already been evacuated, sparing lives, yet tension remained. The crater's edges crumbled slowly, sending small amounts of soil into the void. One moment stability, the next moment emptiness. The silence surrounding the pit amplified fear. Witnesses described feeling as though the ground had exposed something unknown. The nearby house, untouched yet abandoned, stood as a stark reminder of how close ordinary life had come to disaster. The smoke thinned, but did not fully disappear. The dark opening remained, drawing every eye. The land looked scarred, and the stillness deepened the mood. Observers kept their distance, aware that the ground had shifted without notice. The crater symbolized instability beneath familiar places. The earth had opened, revealing darkness below. The image lingered, holding attention through tension rather than motion. Jeremiah chapter 4 verses 23 to 24 declares, "I beheld the earth, and lo, it was without form and void, and the heavens, and they had no light. I beheld the mountains, and lo, they trembled, and all the hills moved lightly." The imagery of emptiness and trembling resonates with the sudden collapse. The smoking pit reflected desolation. The ground seemed to testify to fragility. silence settled around the crater, though the warning remained. Beyond that shadowed opening, another sign was already forming, one that would rise not from below, but sweep across the land in overwhelming numbers. Unten swarms covered the land. The sky darkened as vast clouds of insects swept across the land, turning farmland into uneasy silence. Across Madagascar, enormous swarms of locusts moved in dense waves, covering crops and stripping fields within hours. What had once been green and promising disappeared beneath a shifting layer of wings. Farmers paused and looked upward as the air filled with motion. The sound of countless insects created a steady hum, replacing the familiar quiet of rural life. Harvests that had represented provision now seemed fragile. The scale of the movement alone created fear. What once sounded like distant, ancient warnings now unfolded before modern communities, raising the question of whether the land itself was entering a season of testing. Joel chapter 1 verse 4 states, "That which the palmer worm hath left, hath the locust eaten." This layered destruction mirrors the relentless consumption seen in these swarms. Fields vanished in stages, leaving bare soil behind. Locusts in Scripture often symbolize warning and accountability, and their sudden appearance stirred reflection. The insects moved steadily, consuming everything in their path. The land that once supported life appeared vulnerable, and the sweeping motion across the sky reinforced a sense of urgency. The swarms advanced quickly, transforming the landscape. One moment growth, the next moment emptiness. Crops disappeared as the insects settled across farmland, and the sky dimmed beneath their numbers. Farmers stood at the edges of their fields, watching seasons of work vanish in a short span of time. Communities dependent on harvests began to fear shortages. The constant movement of wings filled the air, and the hum grew louder as the insects shifted from one area to another. The land seemed overwhelmed, and the pace of change intensified concern. Observers described not only the size of the swarms, but also the speed at which they moved. The insects appeared unstoppable, sweeping across regions and leaving stripped fields behind. The emotional weight deepened as families realized how quickly stability could change. The land that nourished communities now appeared fragile. The darkening sky and steady sound created an atmosphere that held attention. Even after the swarms moved forward, the memory of their passage lingered. The fields stood quiet, yet their emptiness spoke loudly. Revelation chapter 9 verses 3 to 4 declares, "And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth." The appearance of locusts in prophetic language deepens the sense of meaning. Such imagery connects these events to themes of warning and reflection. The swarms eventually moved on, and the sky brightened again, but the land remained changed. Bare soil replaced green growth, and communities turned their thoughts toward prayer. Across sky, sea, and land, the signs had unfolded one after another. The movement of insects became the final image, drawing attention to vulnerability and dependence. The scene faded, yet its message remained, inviting reflection and renewed faith. 10 signs appeared across sky, sea, and land, forming a pattern that feels impossible to ignore. A blood-red sky covered towns, fire crossed the night, and a silent light drifted above in stillness. Lightning struck the same point repeatedly. A ring of fire burned on the ocean, and flames rose from the water. Streams flowed through desert sand. The earth burst open. A dark crater revealed hidden depths, and swarms of locusts consumed fields. Together, these moments echo warnings and promises woven throughout Scripture, reminding us that creation itself can draw attention to a greater message. These signs invite reflection, not fear alone. The heavens speak, the earth responds, and humanity stands between them. Scripture calls hearts to awaken, to pray, and to trust in God's guidance. If this message moved you, consider leaving a short prayer in the comments, and like, share, and subscribe so you do not miss future reflections. Your words may strengthen someone searching for hope. Thank you for watching, and may peace cover you and your family. May God guide your steps, strengthen your heart, and fill your home with protection. Amen.
Utah, USA truly split open. The camera captured an extraordinary scene. A bizarre shape emerged in the empty blue sky.
Are we witnessing warning signs of something far bigger than we are ready to face? Around the world, the sky is behaving in ways that feel impossible to ignore. Rings of fire spin above mountains. The night turns red over entire cities. Multiple glowing orbs rise where only one sun should exist. Strange lights pulse while the horizon seems to fracture. These are not isolated moments. They are 10 separate events, captured in different places, yet connected by one unsettling pattern. Each one grows more disturbing than the last. If these signs are related, what are they trying to reveal? Let us begin with the first sign. 1. The sky begins to ripple. In Kansas, the sky suddenly began to ripple, like water disturbed by an unseen force. What had moments earlier been a calm, open horizon shifted into a trembling surface of layered clouds folding inward. The formations did not move like an approaching storm. Instead, they bent and curved in overlapping waves, as though an invisible hand were pressing down from above. Light pierced through the thick cloud base in narrow streaks, illuminating portions from within. Storm clouds are typically dense and dark, yet these appeared strangely bright, glowing in uneven patches that made the entire sky look alive. People who witnessed the scene stood still, watching the motion unfold in silence, unsure whether they were observing weather or something far more unusual. The footage lasted only seconds, but the visual spread rapidly online. Viewers replayed the moment repeatedly, noting how the ripple pattern stretched across a wide section of sky. The layered texture resembled water, disturbed by a distant vibration. No thunder followed, no rain arrived. The clouds shifted, held their shape, and then slowly softened. That absence of immediate danger made the scene more unsettling, because the sky behaved as though it was revealing movement rather than unleashing a storm. Many who watched described a lingering unease, as if the atmosphere itself had briefly exposed a hidden motion usually kept out of sight. Luke 21:25 speaks about signs appearing in the heavens. And there shall be signs in the sun, and in the moon, and in the stars, the sea and the waves roaring. The imagery of waves echoes the visual rhythm of the clouds. When the sky moves in patterns resembling water, some believers see more than a rare atmospheric effect. They see creation responding to divine authority, a reminder that the heavens themselves can shift at His command. The rippling motion seemed structured rather than random, encouraging viewers to interpret the scene as intentional rather than accidental. The brightness within the clouds remained difficult to explain. The symmetrical folding appeared too deliberate for ordinary turbulence. As the footage circulated, observers pointed out how the illumination remained consistent across different sections. The sky did not flash violently. It did not darken. It simply revealed a disturbance, then withdrew. That quiet appearance and disappearance created more tension than a dramatic storm would have. It felt less like a threat and more like a signal. Some dismissed the sight as an unusual but natural cloud formation. Yet for those who watched the sky shift above Kansas, the impression lingered. The clouds settled, the brightness faded, and the horizon returned to normal. Life continued, but the question remained. If the sky can ripple like this without warning, it suggests that even calm heavens may hold movements we rarely notice. 2. Night stood still under pulsing blue lights. Over the night sky, a strange blue glow suddenly spread across a large portion of the horizon, hanging above the city in complete silence. What began as a faint illumination quickly intensified, forming several distinct clusters that appeared perfectly still. The lights did not flash like aircraft or drift like satellites. They remained suspended, radiating a calm yet deeply unsettling presence. Witnesses gathered in the streets, staring upward as the clusters pulsed slowly, almost like a living heartbeat written across the heavens. The glow seeped through thin layers of cloud, lighting them from within and transforming the ordinary darkness into something otherworldly. Many described the silence beneath the lights as unusually heavy, as though the atmosphere itself had paused. The clusters remained visible for hours, maintaining their position without shifting. No sudden movement followed, no thunder echoed, no mechanical sound explained their presence. Their rhythm felt measured and deliberate, brightening slightly before dimming again in slow cycles. Phones were raised, videos recorded, and quiet conversations spread through the crowd. Some observers suggested hidden technology, while others sensed something beyond human design. The lights pulsed in a pattern that resembled a signal. It did not appear random. The spacing between each cluster remained consistent, and the intensity rose and fell together. The longer the glow persisted, the more curiosity turned into unease. The stillness of the display, combined with its duration, made the moment feel intentional rather than accidental. Acts 2:19 speaks about wonders appearing in the heavens. "And I will show wonders in heaven above, and signs in the earth beneath, blood and fire and vapor of smoke." These words, recorded long before modern cities existed, describe unusual signs that draw attention upward. When lights form in ordered clusters and hold their place for hours, many believers interpret them as reminders of divine authority over creation. The calm persistence of the glow suggested purpose. Instead of dramatic movement, the display relied on stillness, allowing observers to reflect rather than react. The gentle pulsing appeared almost communicative, as though the sky itself were presenting a message in quiet form. Eventually, the brightness began to soften. One cluster dimmed slightly, then another followed. The process unfolded slowly, not all at once, but in sequence. The glow faded, layer by layer, until only faint traces remained. The city returned to darkness, yet the silence felt different than before. The lights had appeared, remained steady, and withdrawn without urgency. No explanation followed. No visible source remained. The memory of those motionless clusters lingered, leaving observers with a lasting impression that the night had briefly revealed something beyond ordinary understanding. 3. Terrifying flashes lit up the sky. A sudden thunder, like roar, echoed across the night. But there were no storm clouds in sight. The sound rolled over the area with a deep vibration that felt closer than distant thunder, immediately drawing people outside. Instead of rain or lightning, bright flashes erupted across the sky, cutting through the darkness in chaotic paths. The glowing bursts expanded, contracted, and darted unpredictably, illuminating rooftops and empty streets below. The motion did not resemble lightning, which typically strikes in brief, jagged lines. These lights lingered for moments before shifting position, as though guided by an unseen force. Witnesses lifted their phones with trembling hands, capturing a display that felt deliberate rather than random. The phenomenon lasted nearly 10 minutes, and each second intensified the tension. The sky flickered repeatedly, bathing buildings in sudden brightness before returning to darkness. The roar faded, then returned in uneven pulses, creating a rhythm that felt unsettling. No aircraft crossed the scene, no storm followed. The lights moved independently, some brightening while others dimmed, forming patterns that changed too quickly to predict. Those watching felt a deep unease, as if the heavens were presenting a disturbance meant to draw attention. A few observers spoke quietly, while others remained silent, transfixed by the restless motion above them. End quote. Matthew 24-29 speaks about moments when the heavens themselves display upheaval. Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. This passage describes celestial disturbance that captures human attention. When flashes appear violently and without warning, many believers interpret them as reminders that the forces above remain under divine authority. The unpredictable motion of the lights suggested more than an ordinary atmospheric event. Their intensity and duration created the impression of purposeful movement, encouraging reflection rather than dismissal. Some attempted to explain the lights as rare electrical activity in the upper atmosphere. Yet the chaotic patterns left many unconvinced. The brightness did not follow familiar lightning behavior, and the sound did not match typical thunder. Instead, the display felt sustained and controlled. Joel 2:30-31 offers another striking image. "And I will show wonders in the heavens, blood and fire, and pillars of smoke." These words describe extraordinary signs appearing before significant change. The flashes over the night sky seem to echo that imagery, combining sound, light, and motion into a single moment of disturbance. Gradually, the intensity began to fade. The flashes grew less frequent, and the roar softened until only silence remained. Darkness returned, yet the unease lingered. The lights had appeared suddenly, moved unpredictably, and vanished without explanation. No storm arrived afterward. No visible source remained. The calm that followed felt heavier than before, leaving those who witnessed the event with the impression that the night had briefly revealed something beyond ordinary understanding. 4. The morning, multiple suns rose together. As the sun began to rise, multiple glowing orbs appeared along the horizon at the same time. What should have been a single point of light, slowly emerging, turned into a field of brightness, stretching across the morning sky. Some orbs burned with a warm orange glow, while others shone with a sharp white brilliance. Each one pulsed in a steady rhythm that felt deliberate and alive. The lights did not drift or flicker randomly. They held position above the horizon, forming a layered band of radiance that intensified with every pulse. The familiar progression of dawn disappeared, replaced by a sky that appeared structured and intentional. The repeated glow created tension, as though the lights were building towards something unseen. The orbs remained visible for nearly 2 hours, hovering without shifting from their formation. Their brightness intensified, then softened, repeating in slow cycles that resembled a measured signal. At times, one orb brightened more than the others, drawing attention before the entire group pulsed together again. Witnesses recorded the scene, their voices filled with confusion and disbelief, sensing that they were observing something beyond ordinary experience. No aircraft moved between the lights, and no clouds obscured them. The spacing remained precise, reinforcing the impression that the arrangement was controlled rather than accidental. The longer the formation held, the more unsettling it became. This was not a brief reflection or passing effect. It was sustained, ordered, and deliberate. Genesis 1:14 provides a perspective on lights in the heavens. "And God said, Let there be lights in the firmament of heaven, and let them be for signs." This verse emphasizes that celestial lights can serve as markers beyond their natural function. When multiple orbs appear where only one should rise, many believers interpret the scene as a reminder that the heavens remain under divine authority. The synchronized pulsing and consistent spacing suggested intention. Instead of chaotic motion, the lights maintained calm repetition, directing attention upward and encouraging reflection on the possibility of meaningful signs. Gradually, the extra lights began to dim. One faded slightly, then another followed. The sequence unfolded slowly, not all at once, but in order. The brightness softened until only a single orb remained. The sky returned to its normal glow, yet the memory of multiple suns lingering above the horizon remain difficult to dismiss. Revelation 6:12 describes dramatic celestial change. The sun became black as sackcloth, and the moon became blood. Scenes where the sky presents unfamiliar light remind observers how quickly the ordinary order can shift. The orbs disappeared, but the deliberate way they faded left a lasting impression. The morning returned to calm, yet the unusual display suggested that even sunrise can hold unexpected signs beyond familiar patterns. 5. Pyramids appeared in the clouds. Above the desert horizon, pyramid-shaped structures appeared in the clouds, mirroring the monuments below. Witnesses looked upward as geometric forms emerged, sharp and defined, suspended high in the sky. These luminous shapes appeared inverted, their pointed tips extending downward, as though the heavens were reflecting the earth in reverse. The formations did not drift randomly. They assembled gradually, one shape appearing, then another, creating a layered pattern above the landscape. The movement was deliberate and smooth, each structure gliding slowly while maintaining crisp edges. The familiar skyline transformed into something unfamiliar, as if the sky itself were constructing symbols directly overhead. The formations remained visible for hours, holding their shape instead of dissolving like ordinary clouds. Multiple observers recorded the same sight, noting how the pyramids maintained symmetry even as they shifted slightly in position. At times, one structure sharpened, while another faded, only to reappear moments later. The arrangement felt organized rather than chaotic. The desert wind continued quietly beneath them, yet the sky appeared active and controlled. The longer the shapes remained, the more unsettling the scene became. The pyramids on the ground stood motionless, but their counterparts above moved slowly, creating the impression of a silent interaction between earth and sky. Gradually, the structures began to thin, though not all at once. One faded, then another, leaving gaps that heightened the tension. Job 38-33 offers a reminder of order in the heavens. Knowest thou the ordinances of heaven? Canst thou set the dominion thereof in the earth? This verse speaks about the structure established above. When geometric forms appear with precision in the clouds, many believers interpret them as more than coincidence. The alignment between shapes above and monuments below suggested intentional design. Instead of random cloud movement, the formation seemed measured, encouraging reflection on the possibility that creation itself can display organized signs. As the shapes began to dissolve, the sky briefly cleared. A faint outline appeared again, then vanished completely. The horizon returned to normal, yet the impression remained strong. Psalm 147:4 adds another perspective. He telleth the number of the stars. He calleth them all by their names. This passage emphasizes precision in the heavens. Structured forms appearing where randomness is expected can evoke a sense of deliberate craftsmanship. The sky seemed to present patterns, hold them in place, and then withdraw them carefully. The final pyramid faded, leaving open sky above the desert. For a moment, nothing moved. The light shifted slightly near the horizon, and calm returned. The scene ended quietly, yet the memory lingered, suggesting that even familiar landscapes can be mirrored in unexpected ways above. 6. Portal-like ring hung over Oklahoma. A glowing ring suddenly appeared above a warehouse in Oklahoma, perfectly circular and motionless, hovering unusually low against the night sky. The calm streets quickly filled with urgency as people noticed the pale circle suspended in darkness. Its rim remained sharply defined, while faint blue patterns rippled slowly at the center. The object did not drift like a cloud or flash like aircraft lights. It held perfectly still, close enough to feel immediate, yet distant enough to remain unreachable. Residents stepped outside, pointing upward as the quiet neighborhood shifted into tension. The circle resembled a doorway cut into the sky, and the stillness around it made the scene feel deliberate. No wind disturbed it, no sound followed, and the symmetry remained exact, intensifying the sense that something had opened above the town. The glowing ring held its position for nearly 20 minutes, long enough for more witnesses to gather. Some recorded the moment, while others moved closer, trying to see whether the center would change. The faint blue patterns inside began to pulse, slowly at first, then slightly faster, as though building toward a moment. The surrounding darkness seemed deeper by contrast, and the light from the ring reflected faintly off rooftops below. No aircraft crossed the sky, and no mechanical noise explained the presence. The longer it remained, the more the tension escalated. A few observers stepped back, uneasy, while others leaned forward, expecting movement. Then, the center briefly darkened, as if the ring had depth rather than flat light, creating the impression of an opening instead of a reflection. Revelation 4:1 describes imagery that resonates with such a sight. After this, I looked, and behold, a door was opened in heaven. This passage speaks about a threshold revealed above. When a circular opening appears, suspended in the night sky, many believers interpret it as a reminder that the heavens can display unexpected signs. The stillness of the ring, combined with its measured pulsing, suggested intention rather than coincidence. The calm, controlled motion directed attention upward, encouraging reflection rather than panic. The circle remained stable, neither expanding nor drifting, reinforcing the impression of something deliberate. Just as the pulsing intensified, the ring contracted slightly, becoming brighter along its edge. For a brief second, the center appeared darker than the surrounding sky, as though something might emerge. Then, without warning, the circle collapsed inward and vanished. The sky returned instantly to empty darkness, leaving no fading glow. Ezekiel 1:16 offers another image. Their appearance was as if it were a wheel in the middle of a wheel. Circular forms in heavenly visions often convey mystery and motion. The ring over Oklahoma disappeared abruptly, and the sudden contraction made the ending more unsettling than its appearance. The darkness settled again, yet the silence felt heavier than before. No sound followed, no light returned, and the town slowly resumed its calm. The memory remained fixed in those who watched, leaving the impression that the night had briefly revealed something beyond ordinary understanding. 7. Ring of fire rotated above the Alps. A massive ring of fire appeared above the mountains at dawn, suspended against the pale morning sky. The circle burned with a vivid orange glow, rotating slowly while the surrounding clouds thinned and pulled away. The ring remained perfectly defined, its edges bright and steady, contrasting sharply with the soft light spreading across the horizon. Snow-covered peaks below reflected a faint amber tint, making the entire landscape appear altered. The motion of the ring was controlled, neither expanding nor drifting, but turning with measured precision. The stillness of the mountains intensified the tension, as though the sky had placed a burning symbol directly overhead. The fiery circle remained visible far longer than expected. Minutes passed, then nearly an hour, and the rotation continued without interruption. Observers recorded the phenomenon, noting how the center appeared darker than the surrounding glow. At times, the inner space seemed to deepen, giving the impression of depth rather than flat light. The brightness intensified briefly, then stabilized again, as if building toward a moment. No aircraft crossed the sky, and no sound accompanied the display. The longer it remained, the more the scene shifted from curiosity to unease. Some pointed out how thin clouds near the ring began forming a faint spiral, subtly aligning with its rotation. The peaks below remained motionless, yet the sky above appeared active, controlled, and deliberate. Malachi 4:1 offers imagery that resonates with fire in the heavens. For, behold, the day cometh that shall burn as an oven, This passage speaks about intensity associated with warning. A ring of fire suspended above a peaceful landscape naturally draws attention to the symbolism of burning light appearing without destruction. The controlled rotation and steady brightness suggested intention. Instead of spreading outward, the circle held its form, encouraging reflection on the possibility that such signs may precede significant moments. The calm environment made the contrast even stronger, emphasizing the unusual nature of the display. As the rotation slowed, the glow began to thin, and faint trails formed along the edges. For a brief moment, the circle brightened again, sharper than before. Then, the center darkened noticeably. Observers expected the ring to dissolve gradually, yet the opposite occurred. The fiery outline fractured into segments, each piece fading unevenly before vanishing entirely. Isaiah 66:15 reinforces imagery of fire linked to sudden action. For, behold, the Lord will come with fire. The disappearance of the ring was abrupt, leaving no lingering glow. The sky returned to pale morning light within seconds. The mountains stood unchanged, but the silence felt heavier than before. The fire had appeared, rotated, and vanished without explanation. No smoke remained, no cloud pattern held its shape, and the horizon returned to normal. Yet, the abrupt fragmentation left a stronger impression than a slow fade. The calm returned, but the memory of the rotating ring lingered, suggesting that even peaceful landscapes can briefly reveal extraordinary signs overhead. 8. Midnight turned the entire city red. At midnight, the sky above suddenly turned deep red, spreading across the horizon with an unnatural glow. Within minutes, darkness transformed into a vast crimson canopy that covered the entire city. Buildings reflected the color, their outlines darkened against the glowing sky. Streets that had been active moments earlier slowed almost instantly, and people stepped outside, unsure whether they were seeing a distant fire or something far larger. The clouds appeared saturated with deep color, uniform and unmoving, as though the sky had been painted in a single stroke. The glow did not flicker like lightning or shift like sunset. It held steady, pressing a heavy tone over the skyline. The sudden transformation intensified the shock because the change happened rapidly, turning ordinary night into a deep red ceiling, stretching in every direction. The phenomenon lasted far longer than expected. Minutes passed, then an hour, and the crimson light remained unchanged. Windows across the skyline reflected the same color, and the streets below appeared dimmer under the unnatural illumination. Some residents retreated indoors, while others filmed from rooftops, capturing how the clouds remained still despite shifting wind at ground level. The red tone seemed to thicken, at times appearing darker near the horizon, then spreading upward again. No lightning appeared, and no visible source explained the intensity. The stillness of the glow created more tension than movement would have, because nothing changed. The city felt paused beneath the color, as though waiting for the sky to react. Joel 2:31 presents imagery that echoes scenes like this. The sun shall be turned into darkness, and the moon into blood, before the great and terrible day of the Lord come. This verse describes transformation in the heavens that captures attention. A sky turning deep red at midnight naturally draws comparisons to such imagery. The uniform color and sustained duration suggested something deliberate, encouraging observers to consider that unusual signs may appear without warning. The lack of movement reinforced the impression of a controlled display rather than a passing reflection. As the hours continued, the glow subtly intensified, then stabilized again. The clouds did not break apart, and the red canopy remained continuous across the skyline. Revelation 6:12 offers another description. The sun became black as sackcloth, and the moon became blood. This passage highlights dramatic celestial change. The crimson sky resembled a city submerged beneath a single color, holding its intensity longer than expected. The stillness overhead made the atmosphere feel heavier, as if the night itself had shifted. Then, without transition, the red began to thin. Not gradually from one side, but across the entire sky at once. Within minutes, the glow weakened and darkness returned. The sudden disappearance felt sharper than the appearance. The city lights regained dominance, and the clouds faded into normal gray. Yet the abrupt shift left a stronger impression than a slow fade would have. The night settled back into silence, but the memory of the crimson canopy lingered. 9. Violent spiral formed in Tennessee. A dark spiral formed rapidly in the sky, pulling surrounding clouds inward with sudden force. Within moments, scattered clouds shifted into a rotating mass that tightened quickly. The movement intensified, forming a defined vortex with a darkening center. The rotation accelerated, creating stark contrast against the lighter sky around it. The formation expanded vertically, stretching higher while maintaining a narrow core. Edges of the spiral brightened faintly, as though light was trapped within the swirling layers. The sudden shift transformed an ordinary afternoon into a tense scene, and the air below felt heavier than before. The phenomenon intensified rapidly. The spiral narrowed, then widened again, repeating in cycles that suggested controlled motion rather than random turbulence. Some recordings captured a deep roaring sound, rising and falling with the rotation. Leaves on nearby trees trembled, yet no strong winds reached the ground. The contrast between calm streets and violent motion above increased the unease. A faint haze formed around the vortex, briefly reflecting light along its outer edges. Observers stepped back as the rotation appeared to accelerate further, the center growing darker as if depth were forming within the clouds. The entire structure held together longer than expected, then shifted slightly without losing shape. Jeremiah 23:19 presents imagery that echoes powerful whirlwinds. Behold, a whirlwind of the Lord is gone forth in fury. This verse describes a whirlwind associated with force and purpose. When a spiral forms suddenly and intensifies without warning, many interpret it as a reminder that the heavens can display controlled power. The tightening rotation and brief glow suggested more than a passing cloud pattern, directing attention upward. The motion appeared deliberate, holding structure despite the surrounding calm. The vortex reached its peak abruptly. The outer edges thinned, while the center darkened further, and the rotation became tighter for several seconds. Then, the structure destabilized. The spiral stretched upward, fragmented into uneven layers, and began to dissolve. Ezekiel 1-4 offers another description: a whirlwind, a great cloud, and a fire enfolding itself. The formation resembled a swirling mass with shifting brightness, reinforcing the intensity of the moment. The vortex collapsed quickly, leaving scattered clouds where the spiral had been. Silence followed. The sky cleared faster than expected, and the air returned to normal. No storm arrived, and the ground showed no sign of disturbance. Yet, the abrupt rise and collapse left a stronger impression than a gradual change would have. The calm that followed felt temporary, as though the sky had briefly demonstrated motion and then withdrawn. The memory of the tightening spiral lingered, suggesting that even calm skies can suddenly reveal intense and structured movement. If a vortex can form, tighten, and vanish within minutes, the next sign might not spin violently at all. 10. Sky appeared to crack open above Ohio. The sky suddenly appeared to split. Branching lines of fiery light spread outward like cracks across a bright blue horizon. The patterns formed quickly, cutting sharp angles and expanding in multiple directions. Witnesses lifted their cameras while a low roar echoed, deep and unfamiliar, adding urgency to the moment. The streaks did not flicker like lightning or fade like contrails. They held their shape, glowing steadily, as though the sky itself had developed visible fractures. The lines stretched wider, intersecting at jagged points, and the blue background made the brightness more intense. Within seconds, the formation resembled a web of fractures suspended overhead. The event unfolded rapidly. The branching lines continued to extend, some brightening while others thinned. Observers noted that the glow remained consistent, not pulsing, but spreading. The low roar grew slightly louder, then softened, repeating in uneven waves. Multiple recordings captured the same structure from different viewpoints, showing how the fractures covered a broad portion of the sky. The edges of the lines appeared sharper at their tips, as though the cracks were still forming. No clouds surrounded the pattern, leaving the light suspended against open blue. The longer it remained, the more the scene felt structured rather than random. The lines intersected at new angles, briefly creating triangular gaps before stabilizing again. Isaiah 64:1 presents language that resonates with imagery of a divided sky. "Oh, that thou wouldest rend the heavens." This verse describes the heavens being torn open. When branching lines appear across a clear horizon, many interpret the scene as a reminder that the sky can display sudden transformation. The structured expansion and sustained brightness suggested something deliberate, directing attention upward. The formation appeared controlled, holding together despite the absence of clouds or storms. As the glow reached its widest spread, the lines began to thin at the edges. The roar faded, leaving a quiet tension. Then, instead of disappearing gradually, several fractures dimmed simultaneously. The remaining lines held for a few seconds longer before weakening. Ezekiel 1:1 offers another striking image. The heavens were opened. The formation resembled a brief opening that appeared and then closed. The light diminished unevenly, some segments fading faster than others, until only faint traces remained. Within moments, the sky returned to clear blue. No smoke, no cloud, and no visible source remained. The abrupt return to normal made the event feel shorter than it had been. The calm horizon contrasted sharply with the intense pattern that had filled it seconds earlier. Observers lowered their cameras, but the image of branching light lingered. Across these 10 moments, a pattern emerged. Fractured sky, crimson midnight, swirling fire, silent rings, glowing orbs, and towering shapes appeared in different places, yet carried the same weight. Each sign seemed isolated, but together they formed a sequence that echoes the language of Scripture. The heavens spoke through light, motion, and stillness, reminding us how quickly the ordinary can change. These moments, scattered across time and distance, created a sense that something larger connects them, inviting reflection rather than quick dismissal. The Bible often describes signs that awaken hearts and call people to readiness. These scenes do not demand fear, but attention. They invite us to stay watchful, to pray, and to keep faith steady even when the sky itself feels uncertain. When unusual things unfold above us, they can inspire prayer, repentance, and renewed trust in the Lord who holds all things in His hands. Such reminders encourage believers to focus not on panic, but on preparedness, strengthening faith and compassion toward others during uncertain times. Take a moment to reflect on what these signs mean for you personally. Consider leaving a short prayer in the comments, or share your thoughts about what message you believe these moments carry. Your words may encourage someone else who is searching for hope and clarity. This space can become a quiet place of faith where viewers support one another through prayer and reflection. If this message touched your heart, consider liking, sharing, and subscribing so you do not miss future reflections. Thank you for watching and for taking time to think deeply about these signs. May peace cover you and your family,